Welcome to Anchored at Harbor Park CrossFit, a show dedicated to helping you find enrichment for the other 23 hours of your day outside of the gym. Here's your hosts, Jason, Dave, and Corian.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Anchored at Harbor Park, episode 9. We're talking about recovery, purpose of mobility today.
Woo!
Fun stuff. Dave's going to lead us off here.
We actually have a taste test today. We're doing a little taste test of the 3 different flavors of the Ona bars, the plant-based protein bars we now carry.
Based out of Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's, I think, why we kind of like them. And they're a little bit less fat than maybe the Perfect bars.
Yep.
They remind me a lot of the RX bars that we used to carry, except they're just not as chewy.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, these are 200-ish, 220 calories versus the 300 in the Perfect bar.
I think some of the Perfect bar go all the way up to 330.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, well, let's start with the chocolate almond protein bar.
I'm going to tell you right now that's going to be my favorite because it's chocolate.
And I have a little bit of a cold, so I won't bite off of it.
Speaking of which, so do I.
It's very brownie-like.
I just want just a teeny tiny spot. I hope I can taste it with this cold right now.
Yeah, I would say it tastes kind of like a brownie.
Mm-hmm. You can taste that nutty.
Yeah, I like it. It was good.
So they got probiotics, antioxidants, other good stuff for you.
I really like the fact that it's got probiotics. I think that's huge. And I feel like it's not as dry as the Perfect bar, but like you said, it's not as sticky as the RX bar.
I felt the RX bar was almost like a taffy.
Yeah.
It got caught in your teeth a lot. That's part of the reason why we didn't carry it. They just didn't sell very well.
Let's go Ancient Energy.
Ancient Energy. So this says it's got 11 grams of plant protein, adaptogens, maca, L-theanine, and probiotics. So if I probably mispronounced a lot of those.
I think they use bee honey as their energy and sugar and stuff.
We do have to make that a note if that is what's in there for their sugar. I did have a nutrition consult with a member that 2 things she's allergic to, asparagus and bee honey. I was very intrigued by this. She doesn't know why. She just knows those are 2 things that she is allergic to. So if you're listening and there's bee honey in this, don't eat it.
That one's actually pretty good.
I like this one the most.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of. It definitely has the honey in it, so I definitely taste that.
Mm-hmm. It's almost kind of grainy.
It does remind me of something that's right there and I can't think of it.
Kind of like a trail mix or maybe a granola type.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. And our last one
Very tasty.
is the blue package. It's the almond coconut. I've had this one before, and it does have a pronounced coconut flavor.
Uh-oh.
So some people like coconut, some don't. I don't mind coconut.
Go coconuts for coconut. Put a lime in the coconut. Mix it both together.
Oh, that's a big piece.
Grazie.
Yeah, so you can taste the coconut flakes in it, which, again, I don't mind coconut. I like it. So that one's really good. I like all 3. I like the fact that, like we talked about, they're softer. It doesn't have as much fat in it per serving, and I think a serving is a full bar, whereas a Perfect bar is actually, I believe it's half a bar. There's 2 servings in a Perfect bar, so you have to be careful of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I think
interesting.
they're all a unique flavor. It's not nothing I've really had before. It's really tasty. I like them.
Yeah, initially I thought that the ancient grain and the coconut one would be pretty similar, but now that I'm tasting them, I don't think they are. I don't think the coconut one is as coconut flavored as I thought it was going to be. You can definitely tell it's in there, but it didn't bother me.
Yeah. All right.
I like them. Yeah, good.
Icebreaker time.
All right. If you guys can only do one movement for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Like an exercise movement?
Like a CrossFit movement that we do.
Only one.
Only one.
Now, if I say squats, does that count back, front, and overhead squats?
Let's choose one.
Probably so I could get my shoulders involved. I would definitely do overhead squats.
Cookie dough. It tastes like chocolate chip cookie dough.
Which one?
Ooh,
The Ancient Energy.
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I thought
Sorry, I'm still eating the bars.
So
overhead squats for me because I know it's not like the strongest squat, but at least I get some shoulder work in there as well as the legs and the core trying to stabilize that bar overhead.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably say one movement, probably the snatch. Just because it's one of my favorite lifts.
That's what I was thinking. It's got that fun factor, the challenging factor.
Yep.
I changed my I changed mine. Whoa. Can't talk today. To clean and jerk. Just because you can still get a heavy squat in it. You're getting some pressing.
I thought of it
shoulder
after I
work.
said snatch.
So, or thruster would be good too, but I don't think anyone wants to do that forever.
No.
That's not really
All
too
right.
enjoyable.
Awesome. So, purpose of mobility. So, I think that the purpose of this episode was to talk about the different forms of mobility, what they are, what they do, and when they're useful. Because I think sometimes we are feeling sore or stiff and we're not quite sure what we're going for. And like we mentioned before in previous episodes, we give you about 5 to 10 minutes a day, hopefully teaching you guys things that you can do on your own. But if you're not quite sure what each one is for, it might be a little hard to do it on your own. So.
Yeah, so we mentioned this in our last mobility episode. Like, why do we do mobility at the end of a session? We do this 2 reasons. One, to prevent injuries, make you guys feel better so you guys can attack the workouts the next day. It also restores your range of motion. But then a lot of the reason why we do it is to teach you some things that you can take with you and hopefully like, oh, that really helped me with this type of problem, or, you know, and you can use it daily. Because we said if you're just doing the 5 to 10 minutes worth of mobility after just what we tell you to do, that's not enough. You need to be doing more, but at least it's better than nothing. So I think the first thing we're going to talk about is foam rollers and what they're used for and why we use them.
Quick side note, the first time we started getting into mobility and you threw me a foam roller and I had to roll on it and it hurt so bad. I was like, why do you do this?
Yeah, that's a pretty common. I usually hear that at the end of a workout. Oh, mobility is worse than the WOD. And a lot of people will say it just hurts too much that they stop. That is something I kind of see a lot. So if it's hurting you, that means you need to be doing it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's just like a workout. It hurts less when you work out those knots that are in your muscle fibers. So foam rollers, why do we use them? They smooth out basically the muscle fibers. So like if you have a knot, the way I like to think about your muscle fibers is like a sock or cotton fibers of a t-shirt. So all the muscle fibers are kind of woven together like that.
In straight lines.
Yep. And when we work out or you get a knot, they basically tangle up. They just don't move as properly, and then you'll get the sore spots. So foam rolling will push those out and kind of work the knots out of it and kind of make the muscle fibers back to normal. It also pushes out that lactic acid. Mm-hmm. What do you guys have to say on foam rollers?
I mean, it's something that's really easy to do before or after class at home. It's probably like the go-to easiest thing that you can have in your arsenal.
And there's different types. I know that some of the foam rollers we have are the longer ones. I think Racine's are a little bit shorter, so you maybe might roll one leg at a time versus two. And then obviously we have the one with little nodules on it.
The rumble roller.
The rumble roller.
Or
that's
even
right.
like a hard PVC.
Yeah, hard PVC works. You're just, like Dave said, just trying to realign those muscle fibers and push out the lactic acid. Lactic acid is what causes us to be sore.
Yeah, so really good after like a heavy squat day, run day. You can do it before working out. If you're tight, it kind of pushes it brings blood flow to the area too. So
Yes.
if your legs are really, really sore and you do it before a workout, that's going to be leg heavy. Kind of makes you feel.
And that's going to be a theme throughout all these, is kind of like bringing blood flow to that area to
Yep.
promote recovery.
Yep. So foam rollers usually are a little less intense. So unless you're using a rumble roller obviously has little knobs on it, and it digs deeper into those areas, can kind of find a little deeper in, I guess, the muscle fibers itself. So those are the couple different. And then, like Corian said, we do have PVC rollers that we do use up in Racine, and the reason for that is some people just like the harder roller.
Mm-hmm. So the next step up from a foam roller is going to be a lacrosse ball.
Yep, so a lacrosse ball. We have a couple different. We have the double balls that we tape together, or the single.
What do we call those?
Peanuts.
Yeah, because most people are like, wait, where's the peanut in the gym? Like, I'm confused. So if you hear us talking about grab a peanut, it's the 2 lacrosse balls that are taped together.
Yeah, so the reason why we use lacrosse balls is it simulates kind of like a deep tissue massage or like a trigger point therapy, but the main point of it is myofascial release. Mm-hmm. Or, like ART, if anybody's ever heard of that. So like ART is this like a thing that you'd go to where like a massage therapist or some chiropractors are trained in this, where they dig deep into your muscles. They usually use like their thumbs or their fingers, and they're trying to restore range of motion by digging into those muscle fibers. And it breaks up that myofascia. And the myofascia, again, if we were going to think of clothing, you take your arm or your foot and you slide it into the sock. Your muscles basically runs in those fascia. So fascia goes over the muscle, allows the muscles to glide through the body. Okay. And sometimes those get bogged down and tight, especially when we're working out, because your muscles swell, full of blood, and it can get really tight on the fascia.
Yeah. So the foam roller, you're rolling your body like across it, and you're trying to kind of realign those fibers. Foam roller is kind of moving. The lacrosse ball, you're going to generally hit in one spot, and then you're moving your muscle through a range of motion. So one of my favorite is when we do our trap smash, and we take our hand and we touch our opposite hip and then reach up and overhead. So we're kind of like moving that muscle through like short range of motion to long range of motion, helping break up that pressure point.
Yeah, so with the lacrosse ball, like you said, range of motion, you're trying to restore the range of motion. It's like not very beneficial if you find a sore spot and you just sit in it.
Yeah.
You want to try to make sure that you're getting the range of motion back. So if it's sore, especially in the trap or your serratus or your rhomboids on the back, we tell you move your arm because you're trying to restore that range of motion, breaking up those tissues. So if you find a sore spot and you're just sitting there, you're really not doing much benefit because it's just sitting there, it's not doing anything. But if you can move the arm, you're restoring your range of motion in that area. So very beneficial. Make sure you're moving those arms.
So those are the ways to take care of your muscles, soreness, and make sure that the fibers are being realigned. A couple different options. Next thing is?
Looks like we have static stretching. Corey, you want to talk on this one?
So static stretching is when you're holding a stretch for any length of time. Dynamic stretching is what we do at the beginning of our workout when we're moving through a range of motion, getting the muscles to fire, getting them to understand that they need to work.
Yeah, so I think there's a confusion here is why don't we do static stretching in the beginning? Like you'll see some, if you go to like a YMCA or something, you'll see a lot of people doing the holds, the static holds where they're stretching out their hamstrings. Jason?
So if you think of your muscles as like a rubber band, because that's kind of what they are when you get into the nitty-gritty. When you do the static stretching, you're stretching them really far, and if you think about a rubber band, when you stretch it for a long period of time, it loses its elasticity. And the muscle fibers need that elasticity to explode. So if you do these static stretches beforehand and stretch them out, you're not going to be as explosive during the workout.
Yep, and actually that creates injury.
Yeah, also because your muscles generally aren't as warm, so when you're trying to pull them to that, end of their limits and they're cold, that's when, like Dave said, we can cause injury, we can cause tears or anything like that because they're not ready for it yet.
Right, so the purpose of a dynamic stretch is to warm us up,
Yep.
get those muscles warm, get the joints moving, get blood flow to the area.
Yeah, notice when you do a dynamic stretch, like when we do, sets of 10, that first 1 or 2 generally don't feel so good. All of a sudden it starts to get warm and you're getting a little bit deeper in that stretch, whether it's the grass pickers or inchworms or anything like that. So getting them warm. So our static stretches are to increase the joints range of motion, our tendons, our ligaments, everything like that, and then also increase like our muscle length. So those are good when we're warm, and after all the knots have been broken up and the lactic acid has kind of been pushed out, fibers are realigned, so that we can go from, reaching our hand in front to being able to reach our arm all the way behind us. And it takes time. The older we are, the longer it's going to take us to get that range of motion back.
So typically, like 30 seconds isn't really doing much.
No, they say the minimum is actually 2 minutes per joint. So it kind of takes, they say it takes 30 seconds to 1 minute for the muscle to relax and your brain to shut off. So what happens is in that first minute or so, your body tells you it hurts and it's trying to fight and say, get out of that movement. So it doesn't like it, obviously, because there's some reason or an impingement, right? So it's fighting it, and it takes a minute for your brain to finally just relax and kind of say, okay, well, we're not getting out of this movement. And then once after that minute, from the minute to 2 minute or beyond, then it starts to relax, and then you'll usually fall deeper into the stretch. And then that's why, like, if you're doing a Rawat, which we'll talk here in a second, when you're holding those poses for 3 to 4 minutes, sometimes by the 2 minute mark, you're kind of just settled in and it doesn't hurt as much.
Usually a little bit deeper and it's a little bit easier.
Because your brain shuts off and allows you to get to that point. So that first minute, you just have to get past it.
And those are things like our lizard and pigeon pose, that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Saddle.
Yeah. So then we move into banded static stretches.
Yeah, so banded static stretches. So this would be kind of like the same principle we just talked about. But I like to, we use bands basically because it's a distraction to the joint. So if you think about, like Jason just said, your muscles are a rubber band. So when we put it on stretch with a band, it causes the joint or the muscle, it kind of confuses the body. Your body then doesn't have to fight as hard against the muscle because it kind of shuts off a little bit because the band acts as like the muscle. So it kind of tells your body like, okay, relax deeper because the band is giving a distraction there, so your brain doesn't think, your body doesn't have to think, and then it relaxes that joint a little bit more.
Here's one of my biggest things with stretches, too, I've noticed. So, obviously, we talk about injury and everything like that, and I just had a member talk to me about in Racine. She has an issue with her knee. She does Rawat after our noon class almost every single day. And she was really good at the saddle pose that we just mentioned, which is sitting back on your heels and then leaning back. And she started having knee pain and then realizing she couldn't sit in the saddle pose. So what was happening is like her IT band and her quad was really tight. It was pulling on her knee, affecting her squats. If you're stretching every day and you're doing these things and all of a sudden you're not able to do a pose to what you were doing before, or it hurts to get in that pose, now we have a better idea that maybe there's something going on that we need to look at. So it's another tool for us to figure out where our body's at. If you never stretch and never do any of this stuff, those little indicators aren't going to pop up.
Right.
Agreed.
And then sometimes with the bands, you can just get in a position that you can't get on your own, like the bully stretch. You can't really simulate that by yourself.
Right.
No.
Correct.
It's like assisted stretching.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
And so that moves us right into Rawat.
And like Dave said, Rawat is holding those poses. It's a focused stretching. So it gives us a tool, kind of like when we come in here to work out, we give you guys the workouts. We tell you what you need to do. Sometimes having a focused stretching session is the same exact thing. Here's someone else telling you what to do for the next 15 and or 45 minutes if you're doing a warrior series, so that you don't have to think about your stretches. And if you're hitting Rawat every day or every couple days, you're going to get a well balance of all those different stretches and not have to think about it.
Yeah, so I get asked a lot, Corian, what does Rawat stand for?
Range of motion workout of the day.
Right. So those newer people who are wondering what that stands for when they're looking at my body, I think we did change the name.
We did change the name of that class to Stretching Hour / Rawat, just to give people a better idea of what it's there for. Now, we also talk about the stretching hour is there in the class, but obviously we can do it anytime we want. So especially in Kenosha, a lot of people stay after all of the classes and do it. Racine's a little harder right now because it's at the front of the room. Hopefully with our new location, we'll have a designated area. People can get their stretch on.
Now here's one thing with Rawat that, and I'm guilty too, that a lot of people do wrong, is that they just open up their phone and they stop thinking about it. Rawat and they've kind of gotten away from this, but they were really good at leading your breathing.
Yeah.
Taking nice, long, deep breaths, nice, long exhales. There was a point where I was doing Rawat every day, and I was getting really good at those deep breaths and stuff. And that definitely translated into my workouts. I could control my breathing better. It's also a form of meditation, so there's a lot of good stuff. So try not to take your phone out. Really try to focus on nice, long, deep breaths in and out when you're doing it.
Yeah, like you said, it trains your mind, it trains your breathing, but it's actually more beneficial to shut your mind off. Don't let it focus on, I mean, I know people do it, they're looking at Facebook or they're answering emails while they're doing it because it makes the time go by, but if you can just focus your energy on what you're doing, it actually promotes recovery and also calms your mind. That's kind of the point of it too. Use that time, that 20 minutes out of your day, like he says on Rawat, right, that you're just focused on that, focused on yourself, focused on your mobility, and you'll see better results. Shut your mind off.
And I think that's why they tell you to focus on your breathing, because then by default you're not going to focus on all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
I think I have a couple members that'll start to fall asleep by the end. They're so
good.
relaxed.
Basically,
yeah,
you're
that's
going
great.
into that meditation state, and that we've shown and we've talked about it before. That's good for recovery. It's good for your mind.
Okay, so those are things you can do daily to get your muscles more in tune and more relaxed and less sore. So we also want to talk about our active recovery days, why we have them.
So active recovery day is different than a rest day. So that's recovery versus rest. Recovery day is not totally a 100% day off. Recovery day is you're just trying to promote healthy blood flow back to the body. You're still staying active. You're probably still going to sweat, but you're not pushing 100% intensity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just about, like we've said a million times, getting that blood flow, because when you get blood flow to an injured area, it brings hormones and nutrients and everything you need for those muscles to get better. So a lot of people are always like, oh my God, especially when they start, so sore, I haven't come in 3 days. That is the worst thing you can do. Sitting at home, not moving when we're sore is just gonna make that lactic acid sit, and it's gonna make those muscles take longer to recover. If we can push ourselves to get up and get moving, we're gonna flush that lactic acid out. We're going to bring recovery blood to the areas, and you're actually going to feel better. That's why, laying in bed, we hurt, but after a couple steps down the hall, you generally start to feel better.
Right. And that's why our recovery days are usually like I don't want to say simple, but tend to be easier movements, pretty much no weights. You're kind of just either like rowing or biking or jogging, maybe some easy burpees and air squats, or a movement with an empty barbell.
Yeah. Some good accessory work is always fun in there if it's not heavy. And it just kind of gives your body a chance to recover. Again, you can only work out as hard as you recover. So if you're not taking care of your body, your training sessions aren't going to be as good as they should be.
So then that's recovery day. Then what is a rest day?
So rest day is where we just leave our body alone. We don't want to do a flow session. We still don't want to sit at home and relax. Thursdays are always our active recovery day, so I try to move on those days, go for a hike, do a flow session, something. Sundays, Dave and I take off completely. Otherwise, we're just doing general day-to-day activities. So giving your body a big chance to just decompress.
Mm-hmm. Yep. One thing that people don't understand, or they probably just have never been taught, is when you work out really, really hard, puts a tax on your central nervous system. Mm-hmm. And if you push that too hard without giving it enough time to recover, that's when you start getting sick and burnt out. And when like some days should be like super normal and you just feel totally off, that's typically when your CNS is burnt out. So these total rest days are really important to let like the mind part of your body chill out.
Yeah, and I mean, we all want to work out and we want to get better. So we always think, I have to go into the gym and I have to do something every single day. I know a lot of people do mobility on their recovery days or, other things, walks, jogs, or anything. But for me personally, if I shift and were to work out on a Sunday, mentally Monday, I'm like, oh, I can't push as hard because I didn't get that recovery day. I'm already going into my week slightly less than 100%. So
yeah, you can't do it 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So like Corinne said, these workouts are tough enough, especially if you're doing the accessory work, if you're following the programs. I've been doing it for 2.5 years now with Blair's program and your program before that. But it was, I work hard enough that Thursdays as a recovery day, and then I hit it hard again Friday, and then yesterday I was so sore that we just did basically an active recovery day. We had just worked on accessory work.
I had strength stuff to do.
And then Sunday, which is today, we're taking off. We're going to do a little hike later.
Yeah,
but
nothing strenuous.
There's no way I could go.
So that
I'm still sore.
That kind of begs the question: how do some athletes, do 6 days a week, multiple sessions a day?
And I think sometimes they ignore it.
Well, it kind of comes down to they're just a lot more strategic with their sessions. They're not doing, a long strength session coupled with a intense Metcon and then repeating that. They'll do a strength session in the morning, and then they'll do a gymnastics session, which is almost like a recovery in the afternoon, and then maybe an intense piece in the evening. And they're not packing in, 2 hours of work each session. It's more spread out.
Yeah.
That coupled with mobility and stretching and everything in between, plus healthy nutrition, which is going to bring them all the nutrients that they need. This talks about, I think I posted about injury nutrition, we heal better when we eat healthier, so that it's not just I sprained something or I hurt something. It's just being sore. If we fuel ourselves with proper nutrition and proper mobility, those muscles are going to recover faster. That's going to make your workout tomorrow better.
Same with sleep.
Yep.
So,
if
you're getting, like we talked about last week in our episode, if you're putting in multiple sessions or more than an hour, you're going to need more sleep. I think Blair made a post
today
too about sleep.
So if you're kind of wondering how some of those athletes do that, like we said, they're bumping their recovery way up. They're doing a lot more than normal. They have chiropractors and massage therapists and stuff they're seeing, sleeping more, eating better, and then just more strategic with their actual workouts.
Right. It's not 3 watts a day.
Yeah. So that being said, obviously with as much as Blair works out, there's a lot of recovery that goes on at home. Or I have a lot of people who are in offices and stuff like that. So we also want to give you guys some tips and tricks on things you can do at home or at work to kind of maximize all your time so that you don't feel you have to spend all that time just in the gym. So lacrosse balls, foam rollers, and stretchy bands, super cheap and easy to buy on Amazon or anywhere else. Get something and carry that stuff around with you so that you, for those who have long commutes, get out of your car, kind of stretch, get yourself moving, get those muscles to get some blood flow, and then you can utilize some of those pieces of equipment at your office or at home.
Yeah, so we kind of mentioned this before. Sitting is the new cigarette. Shouldn't be sitting for long periods of time. Unfortunately, we do. So some of us have access to a standing desk, which I know we've installed in our house. We have one here at the gym as well, thanks to Callie.
Yeah.
We stand during these shows because we actually started sitting, and then we realized that's unhealthy, so we stopped sitting. But it's not always an option for everybody. So what I tell people is set an alarm on your phone every 15 to 20 minutes. At least stand up, stretch, get those hip flexors, because when we sit, those hip flexors get short and rigid, and it takes double the amount of time to stretch those back out. So if you're sitting for 8 hours a day, then you're coming to the gym and you're wondering why you're super sore in your hip flexors, your IT bands. Well, let's look at how long you're sitting, how long do you drive, all those things. But if you can set an alarm, get up, move around. Corinne said a lacrosse ball, so if you have to sit and your low back's kind of flaring up on you, you could sit on that lacrosse ball, hit that piriformis.
You can use that on your hamstrings. You can slide your shoe off and roll the bottom of your foot, stand up, roll the bottom of your foot. It's all going to transfer up to the rest of your body because all of our pressure points from sitting and standing are going down towards the legs.
Yep, and then I even made a video on it before. It's things you could do at your desk if you set an alarm maybe every 20 minutes to 30 minutes or whatever. You stand up. You can still work standing, It's probably not the most comfortable position if you don't have a standing desk, but you can stand for a short period of time and type. But you put your leg up on the desk like a pigeon pose, and that'll stretch out your low back, and you can kind of sink into it a little bit, and then switch legs. And you can sit there, 10 minutes on each leg, 5 minutes on each leg, whatever, and you're doing yourself a great benefit there by just doing a simple stretch while you work.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay, what's one of your favorite things?
Well, I was actually going to ask you guys a little bit contrarian. Is it possible to stretch too much?
There is some,
and this kind of gets debated a little bit.
I was going to say there's some debate out there whether you can stretch too much.
So I would equate it to kind of understanding your body, understanding where you're at. Blair recently has actually taken back his stretching and recovery time just because he is working out so much. He just can't fit it all in his day. But he still feels just as good now as he was when he was stretching twice as much. But that goes to show that because he had all that stretching done, now he doesn't have to do it as much now. So it's kind of the same thing. So if you get to a point where you're now maintaining, you don't have to spend as much time. And Jay, I don't know if it causes damage or injury or anything but if you keep stretching that much, but just know that once you get to a point, you don't have to spend as much time doing it.
Right.
When we don't do it at all and then start picking it up, that's when we have to give it a lot more attention.
So yeah, when I first started, you guys know everybody makes a joke, Dave stretches more than he works out. I've dialed my stretching back too, because I finally got to a point where I've worked out a lot of the areas. Like I was really tight in my T-spine, hip, low back, and shoulders, and that was because of my past job. Now that I'm at a point where I'm out of that, it's been almost 2 years, a year and a half going on without that job. Now my body's finally gotten adapted to this current lifestyle where I'm not sitting, for 8+ hours a day and with heavy equipment in my low back. So I don't have to stretch as much anymore. So I'm listening to my body. To answer your question, Jason, if it hurts you or it can give negative effects, I guess if you're hypermobile, some people are hypermobile or double jointed, those things can stretch you too much. So if you're going way beyond normal range of motion and you're like, I don't feel it, and you keep pressing and pulling, then yes, I guess it could cause you to stretch too much. But again, like Corian said, you gotta listen to your body. You have to find like maybe those areas of like that prevent you in a movement. So if it's overhead squats or snatching, and you can figure out like, I don't have the range of motion to do that, then you need to stretch and fix those areas. But if you have perfect mobility, I guess,
then we're just maintaining.
Then you're just maintaining. So like, my shoulders
basically
are super tight today. Maybe I should foam roll them or lacrosse ball them because I just had a heavy shoulder day.
Basically, the majority of people who walk in here aren't really at risk of overstretching because, we have a lot of ground to make up.
Yes.
Some people have been active their whole lifestyle, or just have like you said, Miranda's a good example, who has really mobile hamstrings. So if we go back and look at our example of the rubber band, if it's already really stretched, it could be disadvantageous to stretch it even more and lose some of that explosive power. But for the most of general population, we're pretty tight. That's a pretty tight rubber band to the point where it's not really usable. So probably not really concerned with overstretching for a while.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny story. Miranda, on Friday, we had some stuff on the GHD, and it was Sorensen hold, and it was like a minute. And at the end, it's very glute hamstring dominant to hold basically a Superman on the GHD. And by like the end of the first or second one, she was just like actively shaking and trembling, and she finally was like, oh my God, there's my hamstrings. So she's pretty excited, but she doesn't spend any time stretching them because it's not going to do her any good. Right. She needs to strengthen them. So, and that's with people who are hypermobile, a lot of isometric holds and static holds of weight, like waiter carries or stuff like that is going to help kind of tighten those tendons and ligaments up for the joints, and that might be more beneficial. But again, small number of our gym members versus the majority.
Yeah, and as you get through this, you start to know your body. Like, oh, my traps are really sore or on fire, or my right side is, it's an indication you need to get the lacrosse ball in there and start and get the knot out, Whereas I'm sore today, I'll be honest, but like, I feel good. Like I know that I don't need to roll out or stretch because I don't really have any, like, other than just general soreness, you know?
Right. It's not like an intense or like a digging pain or anything.
Yeah. Whereas me, I'm going to get done here and probably work on my lats because they're really fried right now. So they definitely need to be foam rolled and lacrosse balled.
But that just brings me to one last point is try to get on mobility before there's an issue, or try to figure out what the issue is prior. So I think a lot of people will wait. They don't do any mobility or any type of stretching, and then all of a sudden they hurt their low back, or it gets really tight, and then they're like, oh, I need a stretch for this, Dave. I'm really, really sore. What do you have for me? The point is, like, you don't want to just stretch only when you have an issue. You want to try to figure out, like, if it's a repetitive thing where it keeps happening, like you're always tightening your back, we need to figure that out. Like, why does it keep happening to you? So let's, one thing I usually tell people is, like, set up a goal session. We can do a functional movement screen with you, put you through some different stretch or movements to determine where the issue is, and then we can give you some side programming to work on those deficiencies.
Yeah.
'Cause I think that is something that is usually missing. So if there's a issue that you're constantly having, that means your body has some sort of deficiency. We have to figure out why. Now, occasionally you'll have, just tight back, just because of the workout for the week. We had heavy deadlifts or wall balls, kettlebell swings. Okay, that's normal. Like, that's to be expected. But if something is constantly happening to you, where your low back is always inflamed, or you're always hurting your shoulder, it's always the right side, it's always, and there's some type of deficiency, we have to figure that out.
Yep. So I think there's a lot more stuff that we could absolutely talk about. We could get into details about cupping and TENS units and what is that, cryogenic therapy?
Cryotherapy.
Yeah, all that stuff. But I think for today and what we do in the gym and some things you guys can do on your own, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, we can make a part 2 with more advanced.
Oh,
Yeah.
There's plenty more things we can get into, like she said, and we can probably discuss it more as we go. But
Yep.
I think we'll talk about massage therapy, which will be coming to the gym soon, which we kind of have with Hannah and all that. So, all right, guys, we will see you next week.
Awesome.
See you later.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Anchored at Harbor Park CrossFit. If you would like further information about our programs, visit www.harborparkcrossfit.com. We hope you'll tune in next time.